Now it's time for breaking news.
Bum, ba, 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 bum, bum.
Bad news? Yeah, I mean, it mostly is.
I will confess, I'm the one who gathers these news stories, and there's a lot of positive and optimistic stories about the industry I can focus on. I usually just pick the things that we can be mean and snarky about. So I guess it is the bad game news section. It's the worst gaming news we see fit to talk about.
Maybe that changes in the future. Maybe every now and then, as a treat, we are not sad about stuff.
One of those human interest stories every now and again.
Yeah.
A poodle that loves to use a unicycle?
A poodle that plays Uniracer for the Super Nintendo?
There we go. There's the joke.
All right. First story. Ubisoft's latest release, Captain Laserhawk, the G.A.M.E. requires NFT ownership in order to play. And before Cass gets into detail, let me just say, ha ha, ha 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 ha.
Well, I took my quotations here from a Kotaku article on the subject that gets into the author, John Walker's experience trying to even get into this stupid game. Per their reporting, Captain Laserhawk, the G.A.M.E. is an attempt to revive the once popular Far Cry 3 spin-off Blood Dragon and the spin-off Netflix cartoon Captain Laserhawk, now as a top-down shooter with commentary from Rayman and perks related to Assassin's Creed, which, on its face, sounds like someone fell over in the Ubisoft supply closets. But it doesn't end there, because if you want to play, you have to have an NFT. These take the form of Niji warrior cards, which can be bought via the game's website, where, like in all normal games, you then have to sign into your Bitcoin wallet. This is where your preferred money, or your pretend money and pictures are kept, and in this case, it wants you to use something called Eden Online, Ubisoft's own in-universe creation. NFT games... we had to talk about them sooner or later. I guess we didn't have to. We all assumed that this would die, that we wouldn't have to discuss this shit.
This is the second time Ubisoft has, without any announcement, more or less, just sort of slid an NFT game across the table and sheepishly said, here's the thing we made.
Yeah, that previous game being Champions Tactics Grimoria Chronicle, which I believe is like some very basic turn-based battle type thing, maybe even like card-based.
I'm trying real hard to remember it. I think it basically plays like...
I think it's an auto battler.
The only thing I remember about it is the news story about how everyone assumed that there was a player who was hacking to instantly win every match. Anytime anyone tried to matchmake in that game, they would be immediately defeated by this one player ID. And so everyone thought they had just broken the game deliberately, that this player had like hacked the system. And it turns out after Ubisoft banned that account, banned that user, they had to then own up to the fact that they had just had a grievous error in their programming in the code of the game, and had to unban that user who had won these billions of matches, supposedly. I say billions. It was more like thousands. No one was playing that game. No one is playing that game. No one's playing this game. At the end of the day, that's the rub, is that these NFT games, surprise, surprise, the market has long since fallen out from this industry trend. And when you say they sheepishly push these games out, that is to say that they are not marketing these things. They are not doing anything approximating an adequate job of marketing this game because they don't want to. Like, I have some thoughts we'll get into on this in a bit. I'm going to hold my tongue a little bit now and just for now leave it at that. This doesn't look like a great game. Even if it was divorced from NFT stuff, it looks like a very bad, very, very exceedingly basic, like top-down shooter with no frills, couple pickups, insta-jib, very low poly, low detail aesthetic. It just seems completely unimpressive, completely unremarkable, and that the NFT angle was really the only thing that would distinguish it from like mobile game glut, from something you get on the Play Store.
Yeah, the Kotaku article is all about how the author could not get into a game at all, but YouTube just this morning happened to recommend me a video from someone called Aeon Derp, I'm not the one who named him, where they actually showed what the NFT buying process is, how that works, showed the gameplay. Yeah, it looks bad. Like, apparently, if you want to take a shot, there is a solid second between you hitting the button and the shot coming out. You're just locked in place. It's supposed to become a free-to-play game, right now in its current like early access period, they're calling it, you have to have one of the player NFTs to play. There are 10,000 of them out there, and they've all already been minted or claimed. So if you want to play, you got to go buy one of those things. Cheapest you can get is about $10. They go up to, 4 million or whatever. The price that's not real. No one's going to buy those things. And of course, 10,000 minted doesn't mean 10,000 people have this to play it. It's less than that, because this entire system is based on whales who just like hoard these things up and under the assumption that it's going to be worth something someday. It's going to go free to play eventually, but when it does, if you are a free to play player, you don't earn currency. You don't get to unlock things. You still have to have one of those 10,000 NFTs to do it.
The progression is entirely offloaded onto the blockchain, onto your NFT, so that all your progress is saved to that NFT, to that file, to that character, as it were.
I know Ubisoft just came off of X-Defiant, but you can aspire to more than 10,000 players, right? I know it didn't go well for you the first time, but you can aim a little higher than saying, like, only 10,000 players. I mean, I guess if you look at it, it really is based upon any profit they can even hope to earn, which I don't even know if they expect a profit out of this, but any profit they can hope to earn is going to come from whales. So it could be, they could have only like 6 NFTs, and if as long as they're the people who pay enough money, then whatever.
Hearing that plan, like, okay, what the game is now and what it's going to be free to play, this just straight up seems doomed to fail. Like a contractual obligation, like put it out, but put it out in a way where we know we won't have to do long-term support kind of way. That
was my idea, was that this in the previous game exists because of contractual obligations, because they said they were all in NFTs.
Yeah.
Also, in the in-game store, like, rotates out every week or daily or something like that, there's like emotes and costumes and stuff, but those are also NFTs, and they're limited quantity. So there are only like 600 of an emote, period.
Did they try, there was some other like Rainbow Six or Tom Clancy related game they had tried that in before,
where they added NFT cosmetics into it, and
Ghost Recon Breakpoint, I think.
Okay.
Granted, they're never going to have 600 people try and buy an emote. They're not going to run out of those. But just the idea of artificial scarcity in a video game for like things like cosmetics and stuff, like, why are we doing this? We don't need to do this. The idea of digital is that it doesn't have to be scarce. That's the basis of NFTs, and I don't know why we're doing it.
Well, yeah, because the capitalist dream would be that it is a limited resource, because then someone can have the most of it. It's
the thing, I always say this, I don't know why they're doing this, but I know exactly why they're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, my folks were in town at one point and went to the Museum of Contemporary Art, and it's funny because they have a exhibit right now that's about like digital art, and everyone was like, yeah, it is kind of strange how you can make infinite copies of something, and that really makes you think about the value of an original. And like, man, this was like 30 years ago that they're like, yeah, you can make infinite copies, whatever, like it's not about the original, like that's a capitalist construct. And then we've gone in reverse. It's like, what if there could be not an infinite amount though?
What if you could make digital resources finite? Wouldn't that be cool?
I think Blood Dragon is like a Ubisoft property that people love, that don't like how Ubisoft treat it or do anything with it. It was originally the standalone expansion to Far Cry 3, and people have always wanted a follow-up to that, and we got Trials of the Blood Dragon, which was based on the like Trials by games, and I know that didn't go down very well, though. I did like it to an extent, but I don't know why Ubisoft refuses to make the game that people want, which is a Far Cry Blood Dragon 2.
They could always just make a Netflix cartoon instead, and then base a game off of that.
I am curious about that cartoon. That part of
it's
it,
shit.
I don't get it.
It looks so fucking lame. It looks like the most hackneyed bullshit. Rayman doing coke off of, like, oh wow, we made Rayman dark and edgy. That's what people wanted. I mean, what it ultimately comes down to is, outside of the whaling aspect, which I'll get into in a minute, I'll talk business as much as I can speculate, but what Ubisoft is desperate to try and do right now, my read on them, is that they are trying so hard to become a brand that people like, in any capacity, rather than having franchises or IPs that people like, because any publisher can have like their lineup of games and characters that the audience resonates with, but you have to put in the work to be like a Nintendo, right? Where people associate the brand with good times, with good feelings and sentiment, as much as people do that, as much as we may disagree with that, or people who identify as Nintendo fans. You get what I'm saying here, obviously. And Ubisoft wants that so bad. And we talked about X-Defiant on a previous episode, and how that was a mishmash of various different Ubisoft properties coming into one. And that's what this game is also effectively. It has Assassin's Creed perks with Rayman doing commentary over this Far Cry 3 spin-off universe type looking thing, and it's just them trying to cram as much shit, assuming that people have whatever affinity they have for it will rub off on these other properties and eventually rub off on themselves. They're trying to do like the approach of throw everything against the wall that we have, or put it in a blender and see who's willing to drink up. See who's willing to drink the Kool-Aid of Ubisoft. And the answer is no one. The answer is that this didn't work for X-Defiant, which had infinitely more potential than this fucking thing ever did, obviously, by being a proper free-to-play game that was at least competing in a market that an audience ostensibly exists for, as opposed to this, which is obviously an NFT thing, which is catering to this incredibly small niche audience, and doing no favors for their public perception either at the same time. You know, the irony of this is that for as much as they want to be liked, they are one of the most hated companies in the industry, one of the most hated publishers. And every time they do a move like this, they had like a short windfall with that Netflix cartoon. People, for whatever reason, they eat up slop. They seem to like that. They're like, oh my God, Rayman's doing coke. Isn't that funny? Isn't that wild? Isn't that crazy? And they managed to get a little bit of positive press off the back of that from people who are very easily impressed by adult animation. And then just the next day you piss it away. It is the Ubisoft promise that for every step forward, we're going to take 20 back until we fall off this cliff.
Yeah, this is the thing I was talking about when I was talking about the buyout. They're already doing stuff that the people who would buy them out would do. They're just really bad at it. They're astonishingly bad at this kind of thing.
Criminally incompetent at it. Speaking of criminals, the NFT market and cryptocurrencies and blockchain and all these things that have been, spoken of time and time again. Obviously, people listening to this, I'd hope are fairly savvy, understand that these are all scams meant to benefit a 1%, a 1% of 1% at the top who controls the means of distribution. We would talk about NFTs giving freedom, the line that, you can make money, you can become rich off of NFTs, being told to you by the people who are actually able to get rich because they own the means of producing. They mint the NFTs that you are going to use, and they can rug pulls, etc. Dan Olsen has a video. I'm sure people will reference that video, and it is a great video, just a great primer on how this whole thing is a fucking scam. But for Ubisoft's position, for their position in the market, I get why they're putting these games out. I completely understand, and I don't think it is just contractual. I think that there are whales, and I think that the production on these games, the costs of cobbling these games together, is probably pretty low. Probably on the far low end of 7 figures, if even that high. They're using pre-existing assets in a lot of cases, and the original assets they are producing are not particularly high fidelity or highly complex. The games themselves are very exceedingly basic, to where there's no need to have a team on doing loads of QA and balancing or even introducing that much in the way of content. In terms of having a constant drip feed of updates. And this all serves an audience that is made up of people who are just looking for investments to make, or who are suckered by the promise of being able to make money off the game.
I still want to hold to my idea that, and I could be wrong, but I still want to hold to my idea that this and the previous game, but I already forgot the name, Champions Tactics, are more of a contractual obligation thing. Just because of how quietly they're releasing them. Because NFT sales, trying to attract those whales, trying to pump stock and all this stuff is so based on hype. And they're doing no hype.
Here's the thing. For those circles, for those consumers, they are not being marketed to in the way that casual gaming audience, that the larger gaming audience is being marketed to. We're not seeing the advertisements for these games on traditional channels. We're not seeing them at, the Game Awards or whatever. We're not seeing, them on the official Ubisoft YouTube channel. They have videos, they have channels that have like 30,000 views on a video, but where these are primarily being advertised, there's probably like on Discord servers or within like community groups on Twitter, those Twitter spaces.
But they need to be advertising these to like the broader audience because someone has to hold the bag.
No, ultimately, I mean, the people who are all in on NFTs are the ones who are holding the bags on this. You get a couple of whales to buy up the entire stock. Ubisoft makes their money back off of that, and then they get to lord over people who were also enticed by the promise of being able to potentially profit and only realizing too late that they're too late to the party. You can have an entire economy. You can make a profit off of this game within a month with 12 people.
I think the NFT community knows that the whole point of this is not to play the game. It's to get in and sell out once other people get in after them. Like, I think the people who would be like the power buyers are getting in trying to find like a bigger fool to buy it off of them so they can make that money. Because, like, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, meme stocks are fucking huge right now because everyone involved knows that these are like pump and dumps, and they're doing that on purpose. They're buying these things in to sell them out as soon as possible. I think that if they want to like actually make money off of this NFT stuff, then they should be like trying to get as many casual players as possible in on this. Because that's how that happens.
No, because if they do that, if they advertise it more publicly, then it just hurts their reputation more. And at the end of the day, they're my priority. This is a side venture. This is a side hustle for them. This is a throwaway thing that they're putting out there and seeing if it sticks. Their primary goal at the end of the day is to be liked. They still want to be liked by the consumers at large, and they know that games like this are highly unpopular.
Which is why that makes me think that they're doing this out of obligation and not so much out of like. I think Ubisoft realizes that this is a failed venture, and I think that's why they're not marketing it as like almost at all. It's like, we need to get this thing out there. We have made this thing. We need to release it. If we like start like shouting from the rooftops about this game, we are going to lose respect, but we can't just not release this game right now for whatever reason.
You could just as easily not release it. If they didn't have faith in it to make at least its money back, they would not launch these games.
Again, I don't know the industry, I don't know behind the scenes. It just makes me think that for whatever reason they had to release these games.
Yeah, like there's someone specifically at the like family level, because there's like a part of the Guillermo family, they're all in charge, that is like insistent on like, well, I want these NFT things, or I'm not going to support, and then your like risk of buyout's going to happen, like something like that.
If you want to get messy with real world politics here, I mean, Trump's already, they already have these fucking doofuses who are trying to get Trump to get all in on NFTs at this point. So I think there is entirely the possibility here that Ubisoft is playing the long game, that if they seed the market with these things, if they are the established voice, if they are the go-to de facto major publisher that has interest in NFTs, and then later down the line this shit does take off, then that's a long win for them.
Yeah.
Then they can triple, quadruple, quintuple whatever money they're already making off of these games, which I would venture to guess, and again, I could be completely wrong in this, but they have probably already made their investment back on that game. Even with like the small handful of players just buying up whatever stock and not even buying it out and completely.
For how cheap that game looks, I could actually believe that. Yeah.
So I think ultimately it is just them speculating. It's so they have money to burn. They do have money to burn where they can try something like this. They can take a risk, and they are going to play it quietly, because if in the long run it pays off, then they can shout it from the rooftops down the line. Then they can get the suckers on the hook. And I think people who are buying into the game at this point also are playing a long game.
Yeah, and pathetically, when you compare this against the NFT sphere, having even this amount of a skeleton of a game released is actually way more than most coins or NFTs or anything ever get done that people buy tons of.
That's true.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think for people who love NFTs, like, wow, someone actually did something. This is going to blow up big.
It's a sad, sorry, pathetic sector of the market, but it is one that, we tentatively have to keeping eyes on, because Who's to say that doofuses don't find a way to actually get this shit to catch on in some sort of way? And, obviously the major publishers would all love it if this shit took off, if they could find a way to make the blockchain stuff, make the ownership over character, then having like cosmetics tied to it and having some degree of interconnectivity between their own games and their own ecosystem and having people buying into this currency. There's so many hooks for them to be able to make like perpetual money off of people who are investing in these ecosystems. They can get the casual consumer trapped in that ecosystem and get them on that spinning wheel. It is only going to benefit them. I briefly alluded to before, like this idea that games and characters being on the blockchain would somehow free them from corporate confines and from this, if you own your character, you take them from one game to another and you keep all the items you bought. You don't have to keep playing that initial game because you can just take them into the next game, like completely oblivious to the way that, interconnectivity between games from different companies even works and so on and so forth. No, it's all a mean of keeping you trapped inside of particular bubbles. Every publisher in the world, just as a general business model, wants to monopolize your time. They want you bought into their ecosystem entirely and completely. It's why we have all these live service games. It's why we have all these games that are designed and why we interconnect these worlds in terms of like throwing all these IPs together. It's why a company wants to be liked in the way that like people have positive associations with Disney. And then when you like Disney, you buy not into just the Marvel shit and the Star Wars, but then you are making your kids watch Disney cartoons that are coming out, and it becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a lifestyle brand. And that is the ultimate dream of all of these big publishers. And Ubisoft is one of the few that has enough scale to potentially make that happen. And it's only by the grace of God that they keep fumbling it so pathetically, so badly, that they haven't managed to make any real traction on that front.
I just tried to imagine a hypothetical, instead of a Disney adult, an Ubisoft adult, and that's just like the saddest possible person I can imagine.
Yeah.
Moving on, our next story. Arrowhead's former CEO and current chief creative